Um, I mean, for me not to say they're essential would be foolish of me. They are essential, and for two different ways. One, what they bring to the table when they're in the corner, and I don't want to disrespect anybody, but I felt like the main event of the weekend, they needed some adaptation in Aldana's corner, and I just didn't hear anything, you know. And that's what concerns me, is when the corner doesn't have a great deal to offer as far as advice as to, look, this is what you're up against, maybe try this. And the thing is, when you're outside of the octagon, I mean, I've cornered lots of people, you see things that they don't. You know, you're in the moment, the adrenaline's going, you're so focused on your opponent that you're sometimes creating a narrative that maybe isn't there. And you can also be sticking to a game plan that's not working for you as well. And that is where a good corner team comes in. We'd be able to like either pull you out of that funk and get you turned around, give you some advice or something different to try, or sometimes just get out of the way. And I know that's a stupid thing to say, but how many corner teams have you seen getting in the fighter's way? As soon as they sit down on the stool, they're trying to pour water in their mouth when they're gasping for air. They're in their face, all panicked. And I've had that as well. I've had good corner teams and bad corner teams. I had one corner man that I would sit down on the stool and he would try and get as many "don't do this" in as he could in 60 seconds. And I start the next round, I'm like, so what do I do? What do I do then? Because okay, you've told me everything I shouldn't do. Now what should I do? And that's where a corner team comes in. You need someone is this relating to Darren Till cornering Mike Perry? I thought it was. I thought we were going this direction. I can't wait to see that for a start. It's essential. You know, you need to trust the person, but you also need to. They also need to know you well enough to know what you need in the corner, and oftentimes that's time spent on the mat with them.
So I'm not trying to just throw Mike under the bus here, but let's assume Darren Till doesn't get that position, because if Darren did get that position, he'd be at least qualified for it. But if Mike's auctioning off a place in his corner to like a random fan, is that something the commission needs to be like, no, you can't do that?
No. I mean, if he wants to do it, he can do it. My concern is that he'd have a random fan and his missus and no legitimate, educated voice in the corner. I mean, I'd probably still prefer that than Diego Sanchez's corner, but that's another story altogether. I mean, that's what I'm talking about with the person getting out of the way, and I don't mean getting out of the way of a knife. You need a voice in your corner. I mean, I've travelled around the world fighting with one corner man, and I went out to Japan. I'd fought in a tournament in Japan with my old Thai boxing coach Owen Comrie, who had no real idea of jiu-jitsu. So I told him what to tell me when I was in bad situations on the ground, because I was fighting a 10th Planet guy who wants to tie him up in rubber guard. And you can go back and listen to that fight, and you can hear him shouting, "Posture up, posture up." I don't even think he really knew what he was saying, but you know, I'd coached him to coach me. But obviously, the rest of his instructions were absolutely on point. And just one good corner person can make a massive, massive difference. And my concern for Mike is that he's not going to have anybody, and that's a concern. I mean, I was happy to see Stephan Bonner in the corner of Sanchez, but even so, it's, you know, you need a voice of reason and logic in the corner, and you also need someone that you can trust. So when someone says, "Hey, try this," you're not going to question them before you get into the next round and try it. And you know, faith in the corner team is a big thing.
So Till and Perry, probably that trust might not be there.
Yeah, the truth is, knowing Darren Till as a fighter, when he gets in that corner, for all the hot air and nonsense that he talks, when he gets in that fight with Mike Perry, he'll corner him like a good corner man. He will, because it's his instinct. I could corner anybody. It doesn't matter whether I like them or not. If I feel like I can help them win the fight, I will tell them, because that's my job as a corner man. And Darren Till's old school. I know he'll do that. If he's in that corner, he'll give Mike Perry good advice.
For me, a lot. I mean, obviously, I'm a guy who's jumped around and switched things up when I felt that I needed to refresh things and maybe get a new look on training. So for me, having just anybody in there wouldn't do. You know, I need to hear certain voices, and I need to have those guys saying the right things right before I enter the cage to kind of get me in the right headspace. So for me, it's really important.
So without trying to throw him under the bus here, do you look at something like Mike Perry auctioning off a spot and think maybe the commission should consider stepping in, or do you think that opens a can of worms in itself as to who can be in a corner, or what's the take on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, it's up to him, right? And it's up to the fighter, whoever they want to have in there. As long as they fill out all the paperwork and do their thing, I mean, that's his decision. He's a guy that maybe isn't going to listen to them anyway, right? That he's going to do his own thing. I don't mean that disrespectfully. Some guys are just going to ride off of their their emotions and their instincts in the octagon. And Mike's definitely one of those guys. But, when he fought me, he had a good corner. He was out at, Jackson's and Winklejohn, and had Frank Lester in his corner, and that was who he was working pads with. And he listened. They were yelling out certain code words, and he was following those. So even though maybe it was frustrating him to do that, it beat me, and he had a good performance, and he was more technical, I feel, in that fight than we've seen him in other fights. So I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen if he gets Darren Till. Might be the best case scenario for him. So hopefully Darren is serious and chucks out that cash. But I don't see Mike letting that happen.
Yeah, there has to be. I mean, some fighters are nomadic. They just kind of move around and drift, and they do try different things, and some things work, some things don't. I mean, some fighters just don't need a corner team at all, and that that's their feeling. I still feel like there's a benefit in having a logical voice in the corner that point things out that you can't. But who does that is really down to what trust you put in that individual. It's the same with Mark Henry in that corner. You've got Mark Henry on one side, you've got Ricardo Almeida on the other, kind of giving both sides of the game plan. And then obviously you've got Ray Longo and Matt Serra, who are both just basically on the same page, thinking the same things and saying the same things. It's horses for courses, isn't it? It's down to the individual fighter and what they need. And I think Holly's a good example of someone that walked into the right gym at the very beginning of her career and found the right team. And there are so many fighters out there that drift from one team to the next and just don't find what they're looking for. And that may be just the situation of the sport at the moment, with there not being enough people that have been MMA fighters or have been around MMA long enough to understand what it takes to be in the corner.